Hola, bienvenidos a todos. Good evening, how are you? My name is Abelardo de la Peña Jr. I'm Director of Marketing and Communications at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, and we welcome you to En Casa con la Plaza. This is La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, our conversations, presentations, demonstrations, and performances from our home to yours, 3, sometimes more times per week. It's our way of fulfilling our mission of telling the little known stories of Mexicans, Mexican Americans, and all Latinos in the founding, growth, and continuing evolution of the greater Los Angeles region. If you're on Facebook Live, welcome to you. As you know, you could always let us know where you're viewing from. You could chat with us, send us your comments, send us your questions. Those of you on Zoom, the same. We have our chat, we have our Q&A. Feel free. We'll probably answer the questions and let people know where you're zooming in from or viewing from after the program or after we're finished with the interviews. But tonight, we present our monthly Mexican American History Maker session presented by the Mexican American Cultural Educational Foundation. So to welcome you and to serve as our host for the evening, I present Bel Hernandez, an advisory board member of the Mexican American Cultural Education Foundation and founder of Latin Heat Media, a multimedia media platform. So please take it away, Bel. Thank you.
Bel, the mic is not on.
Okay, sorry about that.
Good.
Okay, so awesome to have you with us once again. You know our program, if you've watched before, it is it's just an uplifting program about who we are as Mexican Americans in the United States. We are not what Hollywood puts us out to be in their movies and in their TV shows. It's not what we're like, and everyone around the world thinks we're all gangbangers and cartel drug dealers and prostitutes, and so we you know, this organization is about educating people that that's not the case. And more, I think a lot of US Latinos and Mexican Americans in the US are really figuring out that if we want to change the image that Hollywood puts out there, or that anyone who is not of our culture puts out there, we have to do it ourselves. Whether we're in the law careers, or in the entertainment careers, or in the medical careers, we have to be the exemplary leaders so that people can see who we are and the integrity that we have, and that we are just wonderful, smart, intelligent, and people who just want to make a living and really just live in harmony with everyone else. So that is the Mexican American Cultural Education Foundation. And for a year and a half, Dr. Jose Luis Ruiz, who is the founder of this organization, has been doing these programs and introducing us, the audience, to some of the most highly recognized and exceptional Mexican Americans in the US. And today we have 2 exceptional individuals. And I want to introduce to you first the person who's going to give us some pearls of wisdom, and that is going to be Julio Vallejo. And Julio Vallejo is going to talk to us about, is it time to end pigmentation discrimination? Okay, so Julio has a lot of experience, and he is the co-founder and the executive director of Pigmentocracia, an organization with the mission of transforming the narratives around brown skin and American indigenous people at a structural, institutional, and individual level, utilizing mass media and pop culture as platforms for change and real racial justice. He has a deep understanding and experience on issues related to race, equity, diversity, and inclusion, with a focus on the Latinx experience. He has worked with corporations like Netflix, Oracle, TBWA, among others, and to help them understand, he's worked with them to help them understand and integrate racial inequity in their practices and their contents. Julio has over 20 years of experience as media and entertainment executive in the United States and Mexico, having specialized on corporate strategy and market intelligence with a focus on the Latinx market in the United States. He is a founding member of the Maya Cinemas, a company with the mission to develop, build, own, and operate modern first-run megaplexes, movie theaters in underserved, family-oriented, Latino-dominant communities. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics and serves on the board of directors of several nonprofit organizations. Since 2005, Julio has been working on visibilizing and challenging the racism in Mexico among Latinos in the US. So I would like to welcome Julio Vallejo to as our Pearls of Wisdom. Julio? And I think you're going to say a few words, Dr. Jose Luis Ruiz.
Well, I think after such a wonderful introduction of our friend Julio, I think we should let him teach us so much about this very, very important subject, pigmentocracia. Julio, please.
Interesting.
Hi, how are you? It's a pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to see you all, guys, and to chat and to talk about very important issues that move our community forward. And as Belle mentioned, at the Mexican American Cultural Education Foundation, we educate people on who we are so they can see beyond the stereotypes. And this is a very important thing, how other people see us, but how about how we see ourselves, right? Mexican people. Mexican people many times also referred to as brown people, right? And this refers to our skin tone. And yes, not all of us have brown skin in Mexico or people who have Mexican origin, but most of us does. You know, recent studies show that about 80% of Mexicans and people from Mexican national origin have brown skin of some level of tone. And this is a very important thing because it's something that historically has been a conversation that we have hidden, that we avoid, we as people, as Mexicans. We don't like to talk about the racism and the colorism that lives and that permeates among ourselves. We say, no, we're not racist, we're all mestizos, right? With all mestizaje history, this concept that came along during the formation of the Mexican nation to just try to create a myth of homogeneity in the country. But pretty much mestizaje, the myth of mestizaje, what it did, it actually avoided the conversation of racism among population, and it invisibilized the Afro-Mexicans, and actually excluded indigenous people with the promise of making them whiter. You know, the mestizaje, the original of mestizaje was to make indigenous people whiter, not to actually create a new race like La Raza Cósmica, as Vasconcelos mentions. So if mostly 80% of Mexicans have some sort of brown skin tone, then our leadership, our media, our politics should look about like that, should have that same skin tone distribution. But that is not the case. You know, it's just enough to tune on networks that focus on Latino market like Univision, Telemundo, and I'm just going to mention the two networks that actually do Spanish content, but also we turn into English language Latino content. That is the same case. It doesn't reflect accurately the skin tone distribution of the population. There is a bias towards widening, towards white Latinos, right? And we say no, but we're not white. You know, we are all Latinos, and yes, we are all Latinos. But Latino is a national origin, or Mexican rather. It's a national origin. It's not a race, and that is where a lot of confusion arises. We should start talking about race within Mexicans, I'm just going to put a really quick example. Everybody knows the actress Charlize Theron. She's South African. She was born in South Africa, so hence she's African. She came to the US and she naturalized as US citizen in 2003. And then you might think, is she African American? Well, technically, yes, she is. She is African American. So having Charlize Theron at a movie or portrayed at content, does that count as towards helping the African American community as we know it in the US? Of course not. It's even kind of absurd to think that, because she's a white woman who happened to born in Africa. Well, the same goes to Mexicans. You know, when we talk about Mexicans, most of us who have indigenous heritage are systematically excluded from media, from advertising, from leadership overall. I'm not saying we are completely outside, but certainly we are not in the same proportions as the population mandates. And so when we talk about Mexican and Latinos, we should start thinking about race as well, because media representation creates unconscious biases in our minds, and that's how we see ourselves, right? So unconscious bias or implicit bias is something. It's something that how our mind works. Those are mental shortcuts that makes us efficient in thinking, you know. And biases, unconscious biases, are based on our background, on our personal experience, on our cultural environment, and media. Everything that media shows us adds up to that unconscious bias. And skin tone has a very prominent role in this unconscious bias. What do we relate with white skin? It doesn't matter what the nationality is, right? We see it in our countries, we see it in our home countries, where lighter skinned Mexicans are preferred or are related to higher end positions, to better places in society, to the most elite jobs in the country, just because they're whiter, because white skin is related. It has been 500 years of colonization that has embedded in our minds this unconscious bias, this stereotype that white skin is somehow better. And the opposite to brown skin, brown and dark skin. You know, I'm talking about also Afro Latinos. Dark skinned people in Latin America are being related to negative stereotypes, and this unconscious bias that we have within our society, our community, it's very much alive. And the only solution to overcome it is to acknowledge it. We haven't done so. We need to acknowledge that bias. Once we acknowledge it, then we are going to be better prepared to create a common front, to be more unified. Because how can we be strong if we haven't dealt with a structural issue within our own community, right? We need to overcome and to reach social justice within ourselves that leads to racial healing, that makes us stronger, all of us. And my advice is, don't think that you don't have unconscious biases, not only racial, but of any kind. We all do. That's how the mind works. These are mental shortcuts. That's how we're wired to function. So the solution is, be aware that you do have unconscious biases, and when those unconscious biases come, appear in your mind, then you're going to be better prepared to identify them, because you know you have them. You have them, and we use them all the time. So the more aware we are about those biases, the more equipped we're going to be to not act upon them. And that is my 2 cents about this issue.
What a important subject have you just brought to our attention, Julio. I think that we often forget that as you said, 500 years of Spanish colonization in Latin America, and many, 300, well, not 500 years, 300 years. And then, of course, during that period of time, there was such a thing as a caste system. It was forced upon Latin Americans from all Latin America in the belief that the white Spaniards were a superior quality as human. And of course, that's, as you said, that has been wired into our system. So we have a couple of questions that, you know, the audience have, and one of them would be, Julio, what do we do? Yes, you brought to our attention the fact that we, by listening to you and actually acknowledging this in our mind, that's already a step forward, right? But what do we do to change it? Because I have to be honest with you, Julio, I think if the media represented beautiful, more indigenous looking Latin Americans, Mexicans specifically, it would be, I can bet you that in a few years, we would all start admiring that much more. So what do we do?
Yeah, well, it's at different levels, right? What can individuals do in their own homes? We have these biases all the way from the family, right? The abuelita saying, oh, look at that, my mijo, you know, he has green eyes. That's my favorite nieto because he has the green eyes. Oh, está prietita, we love her anyways, you know? She's beautiful anyways, even though she's prieta. So all these sayings, all these ways of speaking, we know that speech creates reality, right? Language creates reality. And the way we talk creates a reality. And so we need to start looking into how we talk, how we refer to beauty. I have talked to people that uses interchangeably the term güero and beautiful. So I said, oh, so was she really beautiful? And he said, oh, no. I said, so she was really blonde? And she says, no, she wasn't that beautiful. I said, I didn't say beautiful, I said blonde. Why do you use synonym of blonde and beautiful, right? And this is embedded in our minds. So we need to start looking how we talk. And also, of course, media has a big responsibility because media creates the imagery that we look all the time, and they show us how we see, or they actually, they tell us, or they suggest how we should see ourselves and how we see others. And yes, we need to start talking about that, because now that diversity and inclusion is a big conversation, it's not enough to just include a Latino, right? We need to include all colors of Latinos, but the Latino that has been systematically excluded is the brown Latino. The brown Latino has been systematically excluded. And we need to push more for that, because we are just being left behind and we don't see ourselves anywhere. And we just see ourselves when we're the gardener, when we're the chauffeur, when we're the narco, when those times they do put brown Latinos. And you know, we want to be the Latino who's a doctor, the Latino who's an attorney, the Latino who is a mayor, etc.
There's one more question, Julio. So in society, you know, currently that we live in the United States, Indians from India who are becoming incredibly powerful, you know, because of their financial power, because of a number of things. They're a lot browner than Mexicans, but their status and their value in society is very different. The way they are perceived, you know, is normal. So also Persians are pretty dark, just like Mexicans, but they are perceived very highly in society. People are like, oh my goodness, I mean, this person is Persian, they must be, or Iranian, they must be lawyers, they must be wealthy, you know, people actually, how do you explain that, Julio? I mean, and by the way, let me just tell you that we have 2 more minutes, so the explanation should be short. But the reality is, it's not just about color, my friend, right?
It's not. Color, skin tone, it's a proxy for race, right? It's a proxy. So there are other elements involved in racialization of people, like you know, features, height, hairstyle. We know about bad hair for African American brothers and sisters. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the people in India. In India, pigmentocracy is a big thing as well. So my question is it that question, is it really, are they really have a higher position in society? I mean, Indian society.
In the United States, not in India. We know in India there's also a caste system, but in the United States.
Yeah. Correct. No, I mean, they have been able to go up in the ladder of mostly on the technical side, right? We know that people from India are actually related with high-tech jobs and engineers. That is where all this prestige comes from. But I would question that people from India and other countries that have brown skin have actually a prestige in American society. I would strongly question that. I would like to have a conversation about it, but because it's very interesting. Yes.
Yeah. My friend, I think that we will have to invite you again because it is an exciting subject, and we are thankful that you took your time. We know you're in Mexico right now doing your work, doing your very important work of educating society about this issue, which often is forgotten. May I now turn and ask our MC, our wonderful, talented MC, Bel Hernandez, to introduce we're very excited, our Mexican-American history maker, Armando Duron. Bel.
It is my pleasure to introduce our history maker for the evening. He is a gentleman that deserves a lot of respect. He is a community leader, and he's always very, very supportive of the Latino community in LA, for sure, and beyond. Our history maker for tonight is Armando Duron, who has been practicing law for the last 40 years and is an acting Superior Court Commissioner of the County of Los Angeles. And he is a UCLA graduate, and following his graduation from UCLA Law School, Fernando was admitted to the bar in 1981, and he began his career as an attorney working in the civil rights practice, focusing on immigration and family law. And since the beginning of his career, Armando has specialized in various areas of the law, including child support, family law, criminal law, and immigration law. He has been dedicated to helping the Mexican American community, and in 1992, he was awarded the Frank E. Munoz Award, Mexican American Bar Association of the Los Angeles County, for outstanding achievement in protecting the civil rights of Latinos. Later in 2008, he was awarded the Justice Cruz Reynoso Community Service Award from the Mexican American Association of Los Angeles County. In 2015, he was elected by 500 judges to the Los Angeles Superior Court to serve as the Superior Court Commissioner for the County of Los Angeles. And with this role, as commissioner, his priorities in this diverse county have been to serve all litigants and counsel with the respect that they deserve, and to serve them with integrity and honesty. And he is also a lover of art and a supporter of artists. I know that of him as well. So he has a love of art, and we like that. We like people who support art and media. So thank you, Armando Duron, for being here with us. We are so grateful to you. And now, Dr. Jose Luis Reese, you can take it away.
Thank you, Bel, and thank you, Armando. Thank you, Commissioner, Juris Doctor Armando. Thank you for the pleasure and for all the things that you've done for our community. We're honored to have you here today, and we know that this is going to be a really fun interview or a fun conversation chat, because we're going to get to know, what is that made Armando Duron this person who has been an activist, who has been a lawyer, a judge, a commissioner, so many things, and we're so proud. So if you don't mind,
let me start by asking a question, and we'll answer it at the end. Why does a Mexican wear a tie?
I will try to answer. I'll wait for the end.
That's the question. We'll answer at the end. But go ahead. I'm
Well,
getting
my
comfortable
friend,
now.
I know that you're a Tejano. I know that you were born in El Paso, and but I also know that your family chose to go back to Ciudad Juarez, just cross the river, as many Mexican American families have done over the past hundreds of years, by the way, because Mexicans have been crossing the river back and forth for hundreds of years. So your family chose to do that. And,
Well, not exactly.
no,
Let me
okay,
tell you the
well,
story.
Tell us.
The story begins in 1928 when my mother was born here in Los Angeles. She was part of the Mexican repatriation of 1931 as a 3-year-old, was exiled to Mexico when her parents were deported as part of that Mexican repatriation. So that's how she wound up back on the other side. Then when she got married to my father, and when we were all going to be born, there's 4 of us, she then would cross into El Paso. We were all born in El Paso, but we actually lived in Juarez. So that's how that happened. We're part of the history of the immigrant history and the deportation history and the we're coming back anyway history that is our history for the last, since at least 1848.
That's right. Wow, that's a very interesting story. And my question, my second question there is, you were in Ciudad Juarez until the age of 8. That means you started school in Mexico, and then after that you moved to Los Angeles, of course, and went to school. How was that experience for you? How does that affected you?
Well, first of all, I went to in Juarez. I went to school from the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and then my mother decided that she had had enough of the violence from my father, and she packed up 4 kids and 3 shopping bags, and we took a Greyhound bus on an 11 o'clock bus from El Paso, and then came to Los Angeles. We're here the next day in Los Angeles with literally nowhere to go. She called some relatives, and we stayed there for a while, and then we wound up eventually in the Maravilla projects. So I started school at Reagan Avenue School in the 3rd grade, and that was really an important moment because first of all, having been to school in Juarez, I knew about my Mexican culture. I was proud of my Mexican culture. So coming to Los Angeles, I was both a US citizen, which meant I wasn't afraid of being deported, and a Chicano who was proud, a Mexican American who was proud of his heritage. So I was in the opposite position of where most Mexican Americans or Chicanos are, or were this is 1963. Then I go to school in September at Reagan Avenue School, and about 2 weeks later, I find myself walking down the hallway with 2 other children. And I asked a little boy who was with me, I said, where are we going? And he says, we're going to another classroom. And he said, how come? I said, how come? And he said, porque somos tontos, because we're dumb. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, we don't speak English. So we were sent to another classroom because that teacher didn't want us. I immediately told myself, yo no soy tonto. I'm not dumb. And I didn't forget that. I learned English very quickly. I went to 4th grade, and because I was a good student, I've always been a good student, I actually my 4th grade teacher arranged for me to skip the 5th grade. And I went from 4th grade to 6th grade. In 6th grade, guess who my teacher was? The same guy who had thrown me out of his classroom in 3rd grade. Well, I'm the kind that doesn't forget. And so, it was a 6 months of jousting back and forth. And he thought he got me. because when I went to Griffith Junior High, which was in seventh grade, I found myself in what is called the what was then called the third sequence. And so that wasn't where the smartest kids were. So I went home and I told my mother, I'm not with the smartest kids. And I kept bugging her. She finally took me back to school and I talked to a counselor and he told me, well, it was your sixth grade teacher who didn't put you with the smartest students. He's the one who decides basically where you're gonna go. I said, oh, so what do I have to do to get to sequence number one, where the smart kids are, the smartest kids were? And he said, well, you have to get all A's. So if I get all A's, he says, if you get all A's, I will move you to sequence number one. So first semester comes around, I get all A's. And so I go to him and I said, okay, here's my report card. He goes, okay, I'm gonna move you to sequence number one. I thought this through. I went back to Brigham Avenue and after school, and I knew that teacher was still there. And I walked in one door and said, you see this? I got moved to sequence number one, and walked right out the other door, and I never went back. So I've always been proud of who I am and been able to stand up for myself. People say I have a big mouth because I'm a lawyer, and I tell them, no, I'm a lawyer because I have a big mouth. So it's actually the opposite, because I've always been, found a way to stand up for myself. And, I got in trouble because I would stand up for myself with my teachers. I got kicked out of CCD class with the nuns because I started arguing theology when I was 11 years old. So this is a long pattern with me.
Well, clearly you chose the right profession, my friend, and I think we all are benefit because of that, because fighting for what's right and being an advocate is something that you've done for many years, and we're very, very thankful for that. So you mentioned already to us that you have a passion for education, that you are a good student. I mean, you have an impressive track record as a student. You went to Loyola for undergrad, going to UCLA for your law degree. Tell us what gave you that drive? Why were you or became so in love with education?
Well, I was always a reader. I was one of those people who, those kids who wanted to read and learn. Even in Juarez, when I was in school there, I was always somebody that wanted to learn. And that's always been a passion for me, even still. I mean, I read a lot of different things, even today. But I think it really begins with a notion of who you are and what you think of your future is going to be. And we were poor. I'm not going to tell you that we had money. We did not have money. That's why we lived in the Maravilla projects, because we were poor. My mother was a seamstress. She got paid by the piece. So it wasn't that. But it was a sense of who I was, and that I had to do whatever I could to better myself. And a lot of opportunities along the way, a lot of help along the way. Certainly the Chicano movement was very much a part of that in terms of opening doors for people like me. And that's why I've had a lifelong responsibility to give back, because it's not just about me. It's not just about getting, being successful for myself, but it's for our entire community. We have a responsibility, those of us who have had the education, and I've had the best education in the world, that I didn't really pay for. But it was because of the doors that were opened by the Chicano activists and the community, the Mexican-American parents, and those that came before us.
Absolutely, and you have demonstrated your love for our community and your love for the Chicano movement, and to the degree that we know that you may have one of the largest collections of Chicano art in the country, and that only speaks of your love of for the Chicano movement. So tell us a little bit about that, about your appreciation that is evident of the Chicano movement and that has been represented into the art of the Chicano style art.
Well, you know, what lasts of any people? It's their culture. That's what lasts. It's their art. It's what they create. That's what we know about the Greeks. That's what we know about the Maya. That's what we know about ancient Chinese art. It's their culture. So who gathers that culture? Who collects that culture? Whose eye is whose telling that story? We believed that we as Chicanos, my wife and I, that we had to tell that story. We had to be part of the gatherers of the art and the culture so that we can tell that story from our perspective, not from curators from New York or other people elsewhere, but from our own, from the perspective of a Chicano and a Chicana. And that's why we've spent almost 40 years collecting Chicano art. There are hundreds of pieces in the collection. It is an established collection. People know about it. People study it. It's written up in books and so forth. But the reason for it is that we have a responsibility as well to present the best image of our community and the culture of our community. And it's a very deep culture and a very beautiful culture as our artists, you know, as you can see around behind me, our artists, you know, are creating and have been creating for forever. You know, I mean, art created by our community predates Chicano art. But certainly for the last 50 years of Chicano art, you know, there's been a lot of artists. A few of them have received some minor recognition, but nearly not enough, and certainly not in the breadth of what is being created. And this collection seeks to collect not only just the few known Chicano artists, but many others who are not as well known, who help tell the entire story of our community. And that's what we try to do with the collection, with the exhibition catalogs, because we have a very extensive collection of exhibition catalogs. We have about 3,500 invitations to Chicano art events. We have an extensive poster collection that goes with it. We have extensive files on artists, biographies, resumes, newspaper articles. So it's the entire way, everything's put together so you can study Chicano art in its true sense, in its complete sense, because it's not just the paintings. It's not about how valuable is this painting. It's about the whole story of our people.
And it tells a very important story. I know Belle reminded us that just last week or a little bit before that, it was the 50th anniversary of the walkouts, the Chicano walkouts. And certainly we have a huge debt to all the people that participate in those movements. You know, we Mexican Americans who live today with a lot more freedom and a lot more opportunity thanks to all of those, you know, people that sacrificed and suffered, and the fact that you're keeping that beautiful collection available and you know, telling a really good story is very powerful. And where can we, I mean, of course, I know right now during COVID, it's impossible to go anywhere and see it, but please let us know where you're gonna have it. I mean, we would love to tell our friends, and it would be, I mean, obviously you have it because you want to share it with the world, and we would love to tell people where to go see it. So as places open up, please let us know so we can post in our Mexican American Cultural Foundation a page, you know, so people can actually go visit those. Let me actually put it on the screen now that I'm thinking about it for a second. I would invite all of you friends to visit our page, you know, our Instagram, our Facebook at MEXAMCEF. And this is a place in which we inform you of our latest activities. And of course, we want to remind you of what, you know, our story, our Mexican American, why we need to have an organization that represents Mexican Americans. You know, we know how important it is, because we as Mexican Americans and Chicanos, we have a story that needs to be told, and it's a complex story. So continuing on, my friend, you know, we know that you've been an activist for, clearly, as you have been telling us already, you've been an activist, a person that has, you know, help others and argue for the benefit of others since you were a child. And we know that during school, you became the board of governors of the university. You were president of MECHA. You were president of the Mexican American Bar Association. You have started many very important organizations that represent Mexican Americans and Latinos. And so you have worked hard to represent us, to help change that distorted image that we Mexican American Cultural Foundation are fighting. And of course, you've been fighting, as many other people have, for a long time. And how do you feel about the situation that we're in today? You feel like we, you know, how much progress have we made? And I understand
I get asked that question. I believe that we've made a lot of progress, but I think that we also have to understand the demographics of that progress. If you were to take just the Mexican American population that was here in 1970, and not all the people that came after, but just the people that were here in 1970, and say, where are those people now? I think you would see that the Mexican American community has made a lot of progress. The reason why it doesn't show up is because we've had a lot of other people come. So we start all over. Every day, we start all over with a new person who needs to learn English, get a job, get an education, et cetera, right? But, and so it looks like in a lot of ways that we have not made any progress, but we really have. We have another advantage now, or rather our young people have an advantage now. They have us. You know, in many ways, our time has passed as the leadership of any group. You know, I'm 65, I think, you know, somebody else should be leading things, right? But I'm here. Okay, I'm here for any advice. You know, like a lot of other people are. We're here. So, and we have not only the education, we have economic resources, we have access to the doors of power that were not available 50 years ago. When I was 15 and helped to found UMAS in my high school, I go back that far, even before MECHA, and then with MECHA, and then I was president of Chicano Law Students at UCLA as well, and then Mexican American Bar Association. I helped found National Hispanic Media Coalition, along with Alex Nogales, who's a previous guest, and a lot of other folks. And been involved with a lot of other organizations. But now it's time for others to step up. Young people, some of your audience, who I know is a large part of why you do this, is for the audience, the young people. And now it's time for them to step up, but they have us. That's a big difference. We really did not have people. We had Mexican American leaders, but they didn't have the access. They didn't have the economic clout. They didn't have the formal education that we can offer young leaders today.
Very, very, very wise words. I mean, absolutely. And that's why we here at the Mexican American Cultural Foundation, Education Foundation, we're trying to remind our young friends and the community in general how many incredibly successful people, you know, are out there that can be great mentors. And you, of course, you know, this video is intended so people will see you as a mentor and will imitate, you know, the things that you have achieved. And you know, you mentioned about the large number of immigrants that continue to come from Mexico, and you know, we struggle. I mean, we struggle to see. I can tell you myself, I suffer every day knowing that hundreds of thousands of Mexican American families are being hurt because they're being deported, you know, out of the country. Their moms, their sisters, their brothers. One brother is a U.S. citizen, the other one is not, and their families are continue to get damaged. And you know, we would be. What do you think we could do to change that? You know, we know you have an experience as an immigrant lawyer, an immigration lawyer, and that's a powerful thing. Of course, I also understand that because of your position, a judicial position, you know, there's certain things that you cannot discuss.
Right.
But within
that's true. But let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story about when I was living in the Maravilla projects. This is about 1965. I was about 10 years old. And I remember my mother having a conversation with one of the neighbors. And the conversation was about how if she got picked up by immigration, how we were going to take care of her kids until she figured out how she was either going to be reunited with them or get them to where she was at, but how we were going to take care of her kids. And I remember sitting at a kitchen table in my house, listening in on this conversation between my mother and one of the neighbor ladies. And what I mean to say by that story is that we need to help each other. We need to be there for each other. The struggle of the latest immigrant is the struggle of my grandmother in 1928. Okay, so it's not just their problem, their struggle, it's my struggle. And so, yes, I cannot comment on specific things, but I can tell you that I see it as my struggle. And we all need to see it as the continuation of our struggle, because that's what it is. You know, it's 1928, 1931, 2020. The story repeats itself, but the difference is that we're here to help.
Those are beautiful words. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. We can't forget that just because we might be, you know, already in this country, you know, I'm an immigrant. I'm from Mexico City originally, you know. Just because I have papers, it doesn't mean that we can't forget the people that don't, you know, and that they're suffering because of that. So yeah, that's very, very important thing. You mentioned, you know, that you were one of the founders of the National Hispanic Media Coalition, which done a lot of good for the you know, for the entertainment community. And as Julio mentioned earlier, the entertainment, you know, the media has such an important influence in how we think, and so it was wise that you and Alex Nogales, as you mentioned, have been here before as one of our Mexican American history makers. It was wise that you guys chose to be involved in that. Tell us a little bit about how that happened, and you know, I know you were president as well for you know. So tell us a little bit about that experience. I mean, that's
well, you know, in 1986, Esther Renteria, who was another co-founder, called me and in my role as president of Mexican American Bar Association and asked me to come to a news conference protesting something that I believe it was CBS was doing at the time, and I don't recall now the specifics. And I told her that I was not going to go to another press conference. I had been president of ABA for about 9 months at that point, and I've been going to press conferences for 9 months for this, that, or the other thing. And my sense was that all that happened is we'd have a press conference and make, threats, etc., air our grievances, and then that would be the end of it. So I was not going to go to another press conference if that's all that was going to happen. And she said, no, that's not what's going to happen. And so from that germinated the idea that we would establish an organization. And that's how the National Hispanic Media Coalition came to be, with, of course, a lot of other people. It wasn't just me or just the three of us. Bell was a big supporter at the time as well, for example. But it was an important organization. It is an important organization because it pointed out the failings of the media. And going back to Mr. Vallejo and what he was talking about, one of the issues we also tackled was colorism in Spanish language media, because it was obvious what was going on. The telecasters were all, blonde people, light-skinned people, and that was their own biases. So we established the organization. We fought, the media. I testified in Congress, filed lawsuits. We filed license revocation petitions, try to stop the transfer of licenses from one company to another. We fought Howard Stern and beat him when he went after Selena after she died. So we had a lot of successes, and I'm very proud of the time that I served as president. I was the youngest person, and they elected me the president. At that time, I was about 32 years old, 32, 33 years old. And I was the first president for the first 4 years of the organization.
Great job, my friend. On one of your statements, as a lawyer and in your capacity, you mentioned something that I found very, very attractive. Is you said that one of your missions was to serve our litigants and counsels with the respect they deserve. It struck to me that you feel the respect is very, very important. Tell us a little bit about how you have worked towards giving them the respect, and of course helping the community deserve the correct amount of respect.
Well, that I think you got that quote from something that what I do now, which as a commissioner, I hear cases. I sit in Compton, hearing family law cases. The vast majority of the people who come before me are self-represented. They don't have lawyers. 55% are Spanish surnamed people who come before me. The demographic is basically mostly poor, low income people. And so I'm there serving those people, and they are in a lot of ways my people. I mean, that demographic is me. It's what I grew up with. I understand what a lot of their struggles are about. I understand from the victim's perspective, domestic abuse. I understand poverty. I understand a lot of the issues that come before me. But the first thing you have to learn as a judicial officer, I think, is to respect the litigants, to hear them out. Because most people, what they want is to be heard. They come to court. Oftentimes they haven't been heard anywhere else. Their landlords, causing them problems. Law enforcement may be after them. Any number of things are happening around them, and they're coming to court. And from their perspective, there's some of them are just expecting the same kind of thing. They're going to get beat up there also. And so right from the beginning, I try to establish that that's not what's going to happen, that they're going to be treated with respect. And one of the great things that happens right from the beginning is my ability to pronounce their names correctly. Juan Sanchez, Maria Solis, step forward, right?
That shows respect.
55% of the litigants, that already is a step in the right direction. That's already like, okay, their heartbeat goes down a little bit because they have a sense that just maybe this person's going to listen. You know, my job is sometimes not only to hear them, but to help them tell their story in the sense of, and the way I ask questions to really focus them in, because they don't know the law. They don't know what's important. They want to tell you the entire, you know, 20-year relationship, and all I want to hear is a certain part of it, because that's the part I'm going to rule on. But I have to focus them in, draw out their story, and then I have to make my ruling, and I want to explain my ruling, why I'm ruling this way or that way. And then the last thing I try to do is get a buy-in. Okay, I try to tell, for example, a dad why he, you know, doesn't make any sense for him to have 50% custody. Okay, because what does that mean? Okay, your child is not a pizza, and we're going to divide up 50-50. Okay, and then I go on from there, and I explain to them why I'm making the ruling and try and get them to understand. And most of the time, they do understand why I'm making the ruling. Now, that way, what have I done? I've avoided a lot of the problems that sometimes arise when they leave the courtroom and they keep the fight going, because I got the buy-in. Most of these people cannot afford counselors, therapists, follow-ups, all of these kinds of things that cost a lot of money and time that they don't have. And so my 5 minutes has to substitute in for all of that. In order to get them to buy in and understand why it is that a man should stop beating the woman in the relationship, because his 5-year-old son is learning that that's the way he should treat the women in his life. And he's more likely to be there in dad's chair 20 years from now. And his little daughter, who's 3 years old, is learning that that's the way the men in her life should treat her. And there's more of a likelihood that that little girl is going to be sitting in mom's chair in 20 years. And I cannot believe you'd want that for your child, sir.
Very, very wise
And
word.
that's when you get the tears sometimes, even from the guys. That's when you get the buy-in. That's when it hits them. And that's when I hope I've made a difference.
I believe so. I mean, and I can see why the 500 judges in Los Angeles and the Los Angeles Superior Court elected you as commissioner. And of course, we would like to soon be able to say there is a Mexican-American governor and soon a Mexican-American president, because I mean, people like you, with the wisdom, with the knowledge, with the experience, with the good heart, you know, are great examples for the future successful people. So talking about that, may I ask you a couple of final questions, which is, could you give our audience, you know, many of them are young people, and of course, you know, many of them are of any age that they may want to make a difference in the world, and they're listening to you and they're impressed about your story, and they would like to emulate some of the things that you have achieved. So if you were to give these people that are listening, you know, maybe 2 pieces of advice, what would that be?
Well, the first one would be for young people is there's an exercise that I ask young people to do when I speak with young people, and that's to go outside tomorrow morning and look up at the furthest thing you can see in the horizon, whether it's a tree way far away or a building or a mountain. Look up and see how far you can see. That's your goal in life. But you notice that you had to look up to do that. And you can only look up if you're proud of who you are, if you're proud of your culture. That's what it's there for, to support you. Your community is there to support you. And you can reach that goal as far away as it might seem if you look up, because you're proud of who you are. That's number one. The second is, my goal in life, in considering my personal history, is to be the husband I didn't see and the father I didn't have. And that to me is the most important thing. And I pass that on to the young people as well, even though they may not be in that place yet. But I think that being the best parent you can be, being the best partner you can be, is the beginning of a successful career. Because it's not just about the career, it's how do you have a successful life? That's the real goal. It's not the successful career, it's the successful life. And for that, you have to have certain goals, personal goals. And if you had a great father or great parent, then be the parent you saw, right? And if you had a great upbringing, then, bring your children up the way you were brought up. But if that wasn't the case, then do the opposite. But the point is that be the best person you can, respect everyone, because that's the way you're going to get respect. And I hope that, everyone is successful.
Thank you. Those are wise words. Belle, do you have any additional notes or questions? Your mic is not on, Belle. I know Zoom is so funny, isn't it? But if you,
while they're doing that, I'm gonna.
You're gonna tell us why
my tie back up.
And you're going to tell us the answer to that question you asked, right?
Right.
Why Mexican? Okay.
Why does a Mexican?
Very important.
Why does a Mexican wear a bow tie? Right.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to say why?
Because he can.
Okay. I like it. That was pretty fast. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to hear about your life story, because you think you know someone, but you really don't until you really start hearing about their life story. And I learned so much. I learned where your passion comes from for helping your community. And we thank you for that. I think that I heard some pearls of wisdom from you as well that, I carry on and identify, and we should all identify, is that we need to help the other person. So
thank you very, very much, Jose Luis and Belle and Abelardo, for having me on this program. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Armando. Thank you, Dr. Ruiz and Belle. We had quite a big audience here. Maritza Jauregui Mandizabal says, "Hola, Armando." Maria Elena Yepes, "Armando, your great story inspires us all." Sonia Alvarado Corona from Tonalá, Jalisco, Mexico, sends her saludos. We have a couple questions here. From Alejandra Jimenez, does Armando have any advice for an aspiring lawyer looking to practice family law or immigration law?
Yeah, my advice is to always be honest with your clients. The biggest mistake that family law lawyers used to make that I would see in the courtroom is that they were not honest with their clients in terms of what the realities of life are. You're not going to get the kids and keep the other parent away from the kids just because. You're not going to get to keep all the property, et cetera, et cetera. Be honest with your clients. That's the best advice I think I can give any lawyer or any professional, is be honest.
Thank you. Julio, don't go away. We have a question for you here. From Nancy Marilu Huerta Gutierrez. She says, first a comment, if of course we Latinos believe that blonde people are beautiful, dark people ugly, from there we despise ourselves. We must eliminate stereotypes and see who we really are, human beings. But how do you break these stereotypes to be able to undertake in the US and break the mold of the bad Latino?
Well, I believe strongly that first step is to be aware that it does exist. Stop denying it. Just maybe thinking that maybe that it does exist. You know, just create that possibility that there's some bias there, and that opens up a whole new level of conversation. Because once, I think these things are like ghosts. Once you expose them to life, they almost disappear. But it's not enough. That's the first step. But it's the very strong and very important first step that we haven't achieved.
Right, thank you. And probably for Armando, the hardest question of all, who are your favorite artists?
That's like asking me who's my favorite child.
Okay.
Because it's not about the artist, it's about the art. It's about the image. It's about the representation of our community, of a particular event or a particular story. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for artists. I'm looking for art, because that's what represents the culture. But this collection happens to have one of the widest variety of artists of any of the collections around.
Well, thank you so much. And from Alberto Juarez, felicidades to everybody. Wonderful presentation. I plan to use this presentation in my class at PCC. And you could catch, for whoever did not see the entire session, you could catch this session and all of our Mexican-American History Maker sessions and all of our En Casa con La Plaza sessions on our YouTube page at La Plaza LA, on our website, laplazala.org, and of course on Facebook as well. Upcoming sessions, here's a great one. I know that you're going to enjoy it, Armando and everybody else. Tomorrow, when we closed La Plaza back in March, we're planning to open up an exhibition called Carlos Almaraz, Evolution of Form, from one of the pioneers of Chicano art. Tomorrow we'll be showcasing his wife, his widow, Elsa Flores Almaraz, will be giving us an intimate walkthrough through the exhibition. And then she'll also speak about her life with Carlos. So that's tomorrow, Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Then finally this Friday, the Quetzal family trio. Of course, we know the great Chicano group Quetzal. This is Quetzal Flores, Marta Gonzalez, and their son Sandino will be together on Friday at 7 p.m. to present us with some incredible music. Of course, you can catch it on Zoom and on Facebook Live. And then tonight, I'd like to announce to everybody, as you know, La Plaza has an annual gala, an awards gala that we present our Pobladores Awards to pioneers in the Mexican-American community. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we are unable to do it at La Plaza, but on October 14th, we're gonna present the 2020 Virtual Pobladores Awards Gala, honoring somebody we all know, Castulo de la Rocha, the CEO of Ultimate Health Services, but also a noted collector of Chicano art. And of course, Los Lobos, East LA Chicano rock legends. You can find information on this. In fact, I'm gonna drop the link onto our chat and also on our Facebook so that you could check it out and join the fun that evening. So with that, muchas gracias, Dr. Ruiz, Armando, Julio. Bell took off, and Micaela, thank you for the behind the scenes work that you did great. So any last words?
Well, thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next month for our next Mexican-American history maker.
All right. Well, buenas noches a todos.
Great to be here.
We hope to see you this Wednesday, this Friday, and for weeks to come. All right. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Take care.